shared with us the four tenants that all the building blocks that that we need to build thriving businesses or enterprises. So I believe some of us who are on the call did attend last in the last series. So you could raise your hand if you were available or if you attended the last series, just to gauge if we totally have a new presence or a new team on the call. If you attended, kindly raise your hand the last series so that we can gauge if we totally have new people. Our speaker may have to do a recap. Okay, looks like we have new people only. Okay, guys, looks like most of us did not attend the last series, so I will give a quick recap and then I will invite our speaker. So Elder Stephen did share with us four tenants or four building blocks uh, to build a thriving enterprise. And one of them was think and live in the future. That is, we need to be able to plan and experience the future that we want to live in, dream, have those dreams, have those visions of what you want the future to look like. And he said it actually takes 3 generations to build a thriving enterprise. So during the week, I think the past week, I came across Amos Wekesa's video, an interview that he was doing that he did, and they were demonstrating somebody who came from poverty and now has over about 5 to 6 hotels in Uganda. He's a true demonstration of a local person like me, like you, who has their grassroots from here and has made it big. And one of the guy who was interviewing him asked him asked him a question and told him, uh, we have seen comments on YouTube, on different platforms saying that people don't understand the cars you drive, the clothes you dress up in, like you should be like driving the latest. And his response to that really struck me and also reminded me of the conversation that we had with Stephen. He said, people don't know that when you're breaking the cycle, the poverty cycle, you have to determine, you have to change, you have to be very conscious of the things that you're doing, of the decisions you're making. And so for him, it wasn't anything about having luxury when he was breaking the cycle of poverty. So it reminded me of the conversation we had with Stephen, where he talked about the founding generation, which is the people who build from nothing to something. And then you have the growers, of course, and then he did mention that, of course, his children will not have to go through what he went through. So those are the growing generation. And definitely, I imagine the generation thereafter will be the thriving generation that will take his enterprises from 10 to 1,000. So I don't know what you took away from the session and the inspiration that that brings to you if you think about the poverty cycle. I know for most of us, we are living in that kind of cycle, so we are still paying school fees for our families. We are, doing black tax. Those are all demonstrations of poverty cycles that could easily follow us if we don't make a definite stop on them and be the people that change the generations and 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 the future in our that to come. The other area he did mention was about diversifying as early as possible, being able to, one, identify your cash cow, and then being able to venture into other businesses that can cause you to thrive. Then the other tenant he did mention was about serializing your enterprise and then being patient. Wealth doesn't come in a rush. You have to patiently grow it. So with that, I will hand over to Stephen to continue the conversation. I believe many of us have joined the call and we are continuing to encourage our friends, relatives to join. Be blessed as we do listen from Stephen. Thank you very much. How about you, Stephen? Stephen, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you so much for
Thank
that.
you.
Good evening to you all. And thank you so much, Doreen, for laying down the ground for the session today. Apologies, my video might be very unclear. I've not had time to set up and prepare. I've just come from out of town. I've just actually landed like now. So it's like I'm just trying to work with whatever is there. So apologies, I'm just trying to turn and see how I can get the most light. You might just be seeing a shadow of me, but I believe the message will not be a shadow, it will be the real thing. So we are going to continue with the building a thriving family enterprise. I had Doreen adding that word thriving. We are not yet there, but I'll just talk about building a family enterprise, because I believe that once we build the family enterprises well, they will automatically be thriving ones. You know, it's a given. It's a given. Once one goes through the process of building a family enterprise, it's a given that it will be a thriving one. I mean, God has already blessed us. When you read in Genesis chapter 1, where he gives the command, and you know, God's word, we are told that his word does not return to him empty without accomplishing that which he has sent it out to do. So in Genesis chapter 1, we see where his word goes out to Adam, and then he says, be fruitful, multiply, have dominion, and subdue. Those are the 4 things that he commands. It's actually a command, but you know, when God says something, it's always a command. When he says something, he's not suggesting. Our God is not involved in cheap talk. He can't be involved in cheap talk. You know, it's us who talk, and some of our words just remain in the air. But God, whatever God says, his word manifests. You can imagine, God does not say something and it doesn't become. Whatever God says, it must materialize. And we see us as men, you know, we also want to say, we say, tomorrow I want to do this, tomorrow I want to do the other, or by the age of this, I want to, no, those are words which eventually at times materialize, other times those words don't materialize. But for God, each and every word that he comes out of his mouth materializes. It becomes something. So Genesis chapter 1, verse, I think it's verse, 26, or I need to check it up. The word comes that be fruitful, multiply, subdue, and have dominion. Now, that word comes out, and so immediately that makes us, it sets us on the path of being to thrive or being successful. So I want to say that as we begin, that as long as we follow what we need to do, a thriving family enterprise is a given. It is already placed within us by God that it must happen. So I will just build on to the introduction that Doreen has already laid down, but I just want to reemphasize some of the things that we looked at. One, we say that most of the prominent businesses today in the world are actually family enterprises. We looked at them. Secondly, we also said that we do not have so many good examples of us as Africans or Ugandans, and more still as us as Christians in Uganda. We don't have so many. Not that they're not there. Already, thank God, we are hearing the stories of Wechesa and many other people. But we do not have so many examples that have already stood the test of time for us to say that these are now thriving enterprises, which can hardly which can hardly fall. Then the other thing which I want to bring back to mind is that it requires a long-term thinking, a futuristic thinking, but at the same time, a long-term thinking. We should know that when we are beginning a journey of building a family enterprise, we should be ready for it even not to happen in our own time or in our own generation. But it doesn't mean you should give up. No, no, no. Someone down the line is going to realize this. So you need to have a long-term thinking. You need to have a future mindset when you begin this journey. So today in the second part, I want to focus more on now actually beginning the journey. I am assuming all of us who are on this call, I'm just assuming we are in the process of establishing a family enterprise, or we are about to begin thinking and establishing one. So I want to speak to that group of people and try to walk us through how this is to be done and how eventually we should see it materialize into a great family enterprise. So I do recall I mentioned something which Doreen has again mentioned very well and clearly, the different stages. There are those people who establish, the founders. Those are the ones we call the 0 to 1, from nothing to something. Then we have the second group, the growers, the ones who take from something to many things, the 1 to 10. From something to many things, the 1 to 10. And then we have the people who take from the 10 to the several, to 10 to the several things. Those are now the people who cause the thriving team. But I also caution that at that time, there's also a possibility of diving because many a times the people in the third generation lose out on the stories of the first generation. The second generation always are in touch with the first generation. So it is a bit harder for them to lose the story of the first generation, because the first generation, what we normally hear people say, people are saying, in my time, for us, we never used to put on shoes. Well, for us, those stories are good because they ground. The second generation is grounded when they keep hearing those stories. But those stories, if they are held on for too long, they can also stagnate the second generation. But now the third generation normally is not so much attached to the stories of the first generation. So it takes double effort for the third generation to either be thrivers, or if they fail, they will be divers. They will dive and they'll crash this whole thing down because they do not know the sweat which went into its establishment. They do not know the pains. They do not know the sacrifices, because those stories do not mean anything to them. So at that point, it needs a lot of intervention for those people to keep on track and know that somebody paid the price for me to be at 10. Now my work is to move from 10 to 10,000. So there is that intervention over there. So today I want to speak mainly to the 0 to 1. 0 to 1. I'm assuming that many of us are in that area. I know if we're in the 1 to 10, most likely we would not want to be attending this series, because the title alone speaks 0 to 1, building a family enterprise. So if you're in the 1 to 10 or 10 to many, you might be saying, I've already built. Why am I going for this? So I'm assuming a good portion of us belong to the 0 to 1, which I'm going to be speaking to today. So 0 to 1, first and foremost, it follows again the commandment that God gave mankind. He said, be fruitful. That is 0 to 1. To be fruitful means produce something out of nothing. 0 to 1. Be fruitful. That is number one. And then, of course, multiply is 1 to 10. Be fruitful, 0 to 1. Multiply, 1 to 10. Have dominion, and subdue is now 10 to many thousands. Because at that point now you are ruling, you are establishing kingdoms. So that is where you're having dominion and you're subduing. So the 0 to 1 starts by us being fruitful. Now, there are basically three things you need to do in this stage. The first thing is to begin. I call it the BBP. BBP. Begin, build, and then pass on. Begin, build, and pass on. Let me explain that. You must begin. You must start being fruitful. And that's what we are all involved in. You find that people are going to school. We are educating our children. We are asking them to get jobs. We are encouraging them to begin businesses, all in the effort of making them productive. In other words, we are saying, be fruitful, 0 to 1. So begin, get a job. Begin, start a business. Begin, start using your own hands to do things. Begin. Now, that is being fruitful. That is being productive. We must begin. And I will not tell you what to begin with. It might be a job. It might be a business. It might be a vocation. It might be anything, as long as you are producing something out of nothing. You have begun. Now, I would want to say this. Of course, there've been all this talk that, employment, whatnot, you need to get, become your own boss. All those different things have been there. But being productive can be under a boss. Being productive can be at a job. Being productive can be being your own boss. Being productive can be at a business of your own. Being productive can be in a partnership, etc. As long as you are getting something out of nothing. So we need to know that is being the beginning part. Now, the second B is the building part. Now, when you get into the building part, is now when you are beginning to be productive, your productivity, how do I start building it and getting it ready to go beyond me? How do I start getting it ready to go beyond my own strength? Productivity can start with your strength. It can start with your knowledge. It can start with your legs. It can start with any body part or any spiritual part or any emotional part of you being productive. But then now when you cross over to the building part, you now begin to lift this thing off of you. How can I continue being productive without using my own hands? How can I continue being productive without using my own legs? How do I begin? Now you begin to build a structure because you know that you one day shall be no more. But for the business to continue or the enterprise to continue, it must be lifted off you. It must be separated from you. Now, let me say this. That is where the difference comes. When we are being productive in a sphere which involves ourselves, mostly when we work or when we are employed, it becomes very difficult to lift that productivity off of you, because you cannot go and tell your boss that, hey, you know what? I've brought someone else now to work for me on my job. The boss said, no, the contract is between me and you, Doreen. So I must have you here until the day I no longer need you and you retire. So that's where now the trick comes in. How do we move from a mind of a career mindset into a passing on mindset? Because some of us really work, we get employed, we succeed, we are so productive, we get a lot of money, we get a lot of success stories, but we have never moved to the building stage, whereby it is still about you, it is still on you. The day you cease, your story will also cease. The salary you're earning will cease the day you're laid off, retired, or in the worst event, the day you die, your salary will not go on, because it was you, your physical you, that was being paid on. So you must move your productivity from the beginning stage to the building stage. And the building stage is, how do I offload this thing off of me? How do I continue being productive without it being me alone? So that is where we start seeing a lot of challenges. I've met people, I've talked to a number of people, excellent work people. They have done their best at their jobs. They have excelled in their careers, but unfortunately, they have not built on to the next, to pass on. Some of them, they've left an inheritance for their children, okay? You can say that, yes, they have passed on, which is the third stage. But what have you built a structure? Because when you leave an inheritance for your child, basically, your child is going to go back to the 0 to 1. He does not transition from 1 to 10. He now picks whatever arsenal you have left him with, and then he starts again the process of being productive, 0 to 1, 0 to 1, because he's not going to continue in your job. He's not going to continue with any of those until you have built it up into a passable form, into a form where it can be passed on. So that is where we see if it is a business, if it is a craft, if it is a job. You need to know that one day this thing called my hands, my feet, my legs, my whatever that I use, my mind, will dim. One day it will begin to fail. One day it will wane away. And at that point, how am I going to make sure that the productivity that I've been getting out of this can still go on? So we need to know that we need to quickly build a structure that creates this to go on. One of the ways is, of course, talking a little bit now for the people who are employed, people who are using their hands and etc. One of the ways which I already mentioned is diversification. You diversify early, you start channeling your ones into other things. Now, those things need to be able to also have time to take off and grow. So that is now the stage of building. From beginning, you begin to build, you begin to restructure all these things, so that you have a mind of passing it on. Because at the end of the day, you are seeing your family enterprise across generations, because we already began by saying that think long term. So you are not worried saying, oh, I might die before I see the establishment of this family business. Oh, I might die before this. No. Even if you die, it's okay. Even if you don't see it, it's okay, as long as you have packaged it and passed it on. So the next stage is the passing on. Now, the passing on is where, like in a relay, those of us who have watched relays, and maybe we've participated in them in the past. When you're doing a relay, the person who is receiving the baton does not stand and wait for you. What the person does is that they begin to start running at a speed which is close to you, your speed, you who is passing on the baton, so that there is a smooth handover. Now, what happens, why many times you do not have very good stories as Ugandans and also as Christians, is that we have failed at the passing on. We have failed at the passing on. And the passing on has a lot to do with preparation. The people who are being passed on this baton must be prepared well in advance. They must be prepared. Secondly, beyond preparation, there must be readiness. These people must be ready, because anytime the baton might be passed on to them in an organized way or in a disorganized way. What do I mean? You might have to pass on the baton earlier than you have planned, maybe ill health, maybe death, any of these things. So if these people are not ready, any time to pick it on, then the baton might be dropped. So there must be a preparation, there must be a readiness, there must be a training, there must be an involvement. Those are the four things: a preparation, readiness, a training, and an involvement. So you need to make sure you identify, and these are normally the people you're passing on to are your family members. In this case, they could be your children, they could be even your younger brothers and sisters, they could be any other family member, because when you're doing a family enterprise, it is being passed on to your family. And in this case, it might, I would assume maybe it's the children. So you need to make sure that even as you are being productive and you've begun to build you now start getting ready for the passing on stage. That means you start building structures, you start building processes, you start building meanings, you start building, different things. And then so that whoever inherits it, he or she knows that this is how this is supposed to be done. This is when this is supposed to be done. So it becomes easy for them to continue, but they must be prepared. They must be prepared, not just a will where you leave a will and say, now the house in this place, the shop in this place, I leave it with so and so, and everyone is getting surprised at the reading of the will. Oh, they gave you this. Oh, you gave it. No. You must prepare early and say, you people, this is what is going to happen. You people, this is how it's going to go down. This is how we must direct the next baton picker. They must be prepared, and they must be ready to receive this baton. They must be in the sprinting position or whatever position it is that exhibits your readiness. So then they must be trained. They must be trained. They must be trained so that they are ready, knowing that anytime from now, this is how this thing goes on. So then that takes us to the passing on. The passing on, where the time when the two people are running together. There are times we have to let in these people into the businesses we run, into the different things that we are beginning to build our family enterprises on. If it's the children, they must be involved. I see our Indian brothers doing this a lot. Like last time I mentioned, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of the Indian community. They are very deliberate. One particular group that they're involved. The father came from, their stories, the father came from Nairobi in 1984. So he came as a contractor, a physical builder. He was building on different sites. He came as a builder. The contracting company brought him from Nairobi. He came as a builder, and in particular, he was involved in plumbing and road construction. So with time, he saw a lot of opportunity in Uganda. So he went back, and then he resigned his job and said, you know what, I'm going back to Uganda. So he began with his building and plumbing work. Now, fast forward, I began to interact with him when he was handing over to his son, maybe about several years ago, 15 or so years ago. So his son took over. Now, today as we speak, his son's son has taken the reins. That is now his grandson has taken, but he's still there. He's still there. They all live in one flat. They have different floors that they live on, and the flat is just right at their industry. And today they are one of the biggest producers of plumbing materials in Uganda today. And they have been able to pass on. There are certain decisions that the grandfather now still reserves for himself. But then there is a lot of leverage he has left for the other people to make the decisions. But it is that neatness in passing on that ushers and opens the door of into a thriving family enterprise. So I would like to emphasize that we who are in this 0 to 1 stage, many of us are working today. Many of us have small businesses today, but I want you to start thinking beyond, I just have a small side hustle, to get bread on the table. I have a side hustle to pay rent. I have a side hustle to do this and the other. No, begin to say, I have a side hustle to build my family enterprise. That should be your thinking. My side hustle, or my whatever it is you're calling right now, must be contributing to a future family enterprise. I would want to also say this: if you're involved in anything and it doesn't go beyond yourself, drop it, forget it. If you're involved in any, even your job, if you're employed and it is all about you, it is all about your career. I retired when I was the senior this, I was the top this, I was the top the other. I got all these accolades. As long as it's ending with you, then the story is not the best of stories we'd want to hear. You must be thinking beyond yourself, thinking to the next generation. That's the only way we are going to break through this cycle of starting all over. Every child who is born starts all over. Why? That mindset shouldn't be there. Previously, one of the things when I was reading, you hear people today from different parts of the world. You find someone is called Smith. You find someone called Baker. Someone is called different names. Now, the reason is that those days it was structured into a family enterprise. Your father is a smith. The son is apprenticed into being a smith. He takes over, then passes on and on and on and on and on. I mean, if even you read the Word of God, the Bible talks about different families with different skills, and that is the structuring that God uses to pass on and create family enterprises. But today, because of the environment that we live in, partly I would say the professionalization of everything. The professionalization of everything has caused us a mind to focus on us as individuals and not to focus on us as a family. So you find my profession is I'm an architect. I want to become the best architect, do the best. And then at the end of the day, when I'm retiring, I hold this big function, we clap and everyone brings presents, and that's it. I go with that thing to the grave, and I remain in the books, the best architect and etc. But the next generation has to start afresh. The next generation might be now, I'm a pharmacist. They'll do their best, they excel, and that's it where it ends. Then the next like that. But we need to start thinking beyond ourselves and begin. Once you have begun, you've got your job, you've got your small business which has begun, you began trading in something. Begin to start thinking quickly, how do I build this thing so that it's structured outside of me, so that it exists away from me. Now, that is one of the biggest, most difficult stages I have experienced as a person, and I believe many other people have also experienced it, to divest things off of you, to divest a job off of you, so that by the time you retire, the productivity actually just even goes up or increases. And it might not necessarily be a continuation of a productivity from your job. No, you've diversified at that point, and you can be able to quickly move on to the next stage, which is passing on. You've packaged everything, you put them together, and then you pass it on. So our challenge today as Christians, and mainly as those who are living in an environment. I know there are many stories. I do not want to discount them. There are many stories, but I would say there are not as many as there should be. That's why I call them few. There are few stories. We have a challenge. We have a big challenge. And how do we start changing our story? As Christians, as Ugandans, as Africans, how do we begin changing our story? let us think beyond ourselves. Let us think there must be one generation that will lay down its life, and that generation should be you and me. You lay down your life and say, let me at least begin. Even if my name does not appear eventually somewhere, they will probably see my great grandson or my son or my grandson. They might be the ones who receive the accolades, but I am okay with that. At least I will have begun. So we need to break this cycle and begin. We need to break this cycle and begin. How do you translate your story, especially for us who are career people, professionals, employed? How do we transition and make sure that we have not just handing over possessions, handing over inheritance to our children, but we are handing over a thread for them to continue weaving the story? So that should be what we are thinking about. And that's why I say you must begin, which I believe a good percentage of us, all of us, have already crossed over now, the building stage. How do you build this thing? How do you build? And at the end of the day, you have something to pass on to the next generation. I'm praying that we can begin to have stories of where, our children do not want to go and begin and set off somewhere else in terms of enterprise. Of course, they might go and stay in miles away from you, but still picking up with the enterprise which you have sweated to begin building. So that should be our story. How do we begin to build, getting ready to pass on? Because God has already given us the command that be productive, that is, be fruitful, increase, multiply, and then subdue and have dominion. So that is the way it goes. Many times we see a lot of these families, you read many of these stories, they're stories of dominion. You hear many of these people doing wonderful things. Those are stories of dominion because they have reached the apex. And again, we as Christians and families and etc., let us not celebrate too soon. Do not get lost in the celebration. You doing well today, as long as you're in the 0 to 1, know that no, it's not yet. You have to pass this thing on. You have to pass it on to someone who is going to now scale it up. And then that person will scale it from 10 to 10,000 and etc. So as I summarize, there's still a lot we can be able to talk on this particular subject, but today I just try to lay out the journey, what should be in our minds. Number one, have something that you are doing, have something that you are working on, have something that is your 0 to 1. Begin. Then after that, begin to build structures off of you. If it's a job, how do I make sure that the productivity continues outside of me? If it's a business, how do I ensure that today if I fall sick or today if I fall dead, the business shall continue and it will not just be buried? Or at times it might be thrown and your person who picks it on just has to start again from scratch. So you must build up systems, processes, and handles, just like a relay person. Where will they hold? How will they hold? What speed shall they hold at? Which side of the hand shall they hold? All that's the building bit. And then the passing on is where you actually give it on and then you run with them as they pick up speed and run even faster than you have run before. So thank you so much. I see the time is already up as per the time that I was given. So I would like to hand over back to Doreen to guide us on from there. Thank you so much and God bless you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. You continue to challenge, make me feel like, wow, I have a lot to do while I think I am progressing. It looks like, yeah, I have much more to do or more areas to think about that I hadn't thought about, which is the reason we are here, for our minds to be opened up to new grounds. So thank you so much. Thank you. Guys, feel free to post questions and as we engage with Stephen so that we can get any further guidance. Thank you, Stephen. I'll quickly ask my question, and because I'm in the employment world, I think the question right now in my mind is, how do I build structures that will help me to transition? And maybe from your experience, what structures have you built? What practical things can we take away as 1, 2, 3 that somebody can say, I can do 1, 2, 3 things to create a structure or to create a pipeline for me to transition from the build from the to transition and create a building block for the handing over stage. Thank you.
Okay, Doreen, you want me to answer now?
Yes, as we wait
Yes.
for questions to come through.
Okay, these are my own opinions on that question. And maybe some people might not be too happy with, with those opinions, but the employment employment is it's an industry. It is like a factory. The employment environment is like a factory. When you get a raw material or something you're using in your input as an input in your factory or in whatever you're doing, as soon as that thing ceases to be productive, you throw it away and get something in. So you need to know that the employment industry looks at you as an input. You're basically an input for a bigger output. And so you need to know that many of the things that we end up achieving through our employment, the big accolades, the big celebrations, the awards and etc., are basically so that people remain productive within that employment atmosphere. So I would say this: use your opportunity to be employed to be productive and amass an arsenal for product, but do not wait until you're being thrown away, or do not wait until you have nothing else to offer. Then you say, okay, now I have been retired. Thank you so much. Let me now go and start my farm. Let me now go and start my business. Let me now go. Because at that time, your best has been given away. At that time, the employer has taken your best. And at that time, whatever is left is not the best for you to put into your family enterprise. I would say, yes, use that opportunity, but at a certain time, put it into your mind and say, the retirement age in this organization is maybe 65, but I, as a person, I am now 25. I want, by the time I'm 35, I am quitting, I'm retiring, or I'm whatever, doing this. Then I will, at that time, have built up an arsenal for me to continue being productive at the next stage, which is building. Now, this building stage is where now you begin to do things which are outside of yourself, things which can go on without you being there, things which do not depend on your energy, on your mind. They might be depending on that at the beginning, but there is light that there will soon be things that will run without even you being there. Now, that is my personal opinion. Like I'm saying, I would encourage whoever is involved at work, whatever period you have to your retirement, cut it into half. Cut it into half. If, for example, you join work at 25, you're supposed to retire at 55, cut that 30 into half and say, I'm just going to do my best in the 15 years that I have. And by then I will have amassed A, B, C, D. I will have begun this, and then you go and begin your thing. I mean, the employment industry, to me, I know it is designed to work like a factory, get in the least and produce the most. So I would think that you need to, don't wait to get to a point where you are caught up. That's my response, Doreen. I cannot tell you what you should do when you quit, but God has already said, be fruitful. So ask him how. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will give an opportunity to Polite who has her hand up. Polite, go ahead, then I'll read the question. Hi, Polite. Okay. All right. Kindly post your question. So I'll read some of the questions here. So one says, thank you, Elder Stephen, for this amazing insights. How do you deal with the issue of entitlement that tends to crop up with third generation? The other question is, so, Elder Stephen, do you imply that to start an enterprise at 0 to 1 phase, one may not have retire one may not have to retire for more employment? Okay. You could respond to those as we receive any other questions.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let me start with the entitlement mentality. Okay, the way I've seen it being done, I will again use the examples I've interacted with. The family I mentioned to you about where the grandfather is still present today. One of the things I've seen how they've dealt with the entitlement, the family has stayed together so closely. The family has stayed together, so the stories have kept flowing. The stories have kept flowing from grandfather to father to son. So those stories have kept flowing by the tight neatness of the family. The second thing I've seen them doing is that the children begin from the ground up. For example, the current son now, he's not yet the one fully in charge, but he began from the ground up. He started in the stores, and these are stories I know because I've been there. He started in the stores, then he went to sales, then he went to accounts. Right now, I don't know his real position, but he makes key decisions for the company. I don't know what he would be called, but he makes now key decisions. So I believe that's another way of dealing with the entitlement, where they allow the stories to flow from the older generation to the younger ones. At the same time, they also allow the younger or the incoming ones to experience the down low and dirty of the business. I mean, in the stores where you're not interacting with money and people, and you're just carrying things, and that kind of like deals with the entitlement spirit. Now, so do you imply that to start up an enterprise business with 0 to 1 phase, one may not have to retire? Yes, to begin, to be productive, 0 to 1, it might be a job. It might be, you don't need to quit your job and say, now I'm done, I want to be productive. No, being at a job is already being productive. You're earning from it. And you're not earning only money, you're earning connections which might be helpful in future. You're earning processes which will be helpful in future. You're earning in terms of systems and mindsets and all these kind of things, which will eventually be. But now when it comes to the building phase, yes, you might be able to build when you're still at work, but the building phase works so well when you are fully into this thing that you're coming up with. Yes. Okay, I see
Thank
here
you,
a
Elder
question here
Stephen. Yes, please go on.
from Polite. It says, is it possible to
Yes.
juggle both, as in invest while working, because sometimes it's not practical to retire at that age? I mean, some people get families at 35, okay? So what she's saying is that, can I be able to still invest and continue my work and etc.? Okay, each and every situation is different, because I mean, if you're earning, say at your workplace, you're earning 500,000, your story might be different from another person who is earning 5 million shillings. Stories will change here and there. There is no clear cut and say, now invest. But one thing I want to mention about this invest thing, people are quick to look for investment opportunities, and they think that investment is zero work. There's what we call, what people always say, call as what? This word is taking out of my mind. This like real estate. What is that investment called? What investment?
Passive, passive
Passive.
income.
Yes, passive income. You know, that word deceives people a lot. In my own opinion, I don't think there's anything that is passive. Um, of course, there are those other, bonds and etc. Those really are too passive that they're even stagnant at times. But what we also say now, I'll invest, I'm in the bank, I'm working in MTN, but here is money, invest for me, this, invest. The stories, many of the stories have been not so good, because work must be involved. The word of God tells us, man was put in the garden to till. This was even before the fall of man. Many of us say, hard work came, sweat came because of the fall. No. Man began work even before the fall. So this investment, there must be work behind it. There must be work behind it. So depending on what kind of investment you're talking about, if it's an investment where there isn't work, most likely you're going to reap zero. But if it's something that has some work, then I believe, yes, you can still do it as you're working, if you can be able to marshal up some time for you to be able to do something around that.
Wow, thank you. So, Elder Stephen, there's also this myth that not all of us are called to entrepreneurship. What are your thoughts about that? Even the
Yes,
entrepreneurs need accountants to support them.
you're right, Doreen. Not all of us are called to entrepreneurship, but we are all called to being productive. We are all called to productivity. These words are new words, entrepreneur, and all. These are coined up things which are recent. I mean, ask someone in Jesus's time, Paul, Matthew, Peter, are you an entrepreneur? They'll tell you, what's that? These are recent words which cause people to get certain biases. Some people say I'm a serial entrepreneur, I'm a this and the other. I want to go back to just being fruitful, multiply. God has given each and every one of us the ability to be fruitful, the ability to multiply, the ability to subdue, the ability to have dominion. That one has been broadly given to us, irrespective of whether you know Jesus or not, whether you're Muslim or not. It's a command given to mankind. So I don't think we are just deceived to think that we are not productive and we are meant to just be this and the other. Words like that, entrepreneur, might be misleading at times, but if we talk productivity, yes, I am with you there. Entrepreneurship, the definitions also vary. People say if you need to be built in a certain way to be an entrepreneur and etc, etc. But let's stick with the words being productive, that is being fruitful and multiplying. That's probably, those are the root words in the word entrepreneur. Those are the root words somewhere hidden there. But when you use them now in the sense, you say entrepreneur, people say, those are the things for so and so and so and so. Me, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a professional. I'm this and the other. But what did God say? I told you his word does not return to him empty without accomplishing that which it has been sent for. So when God says that he has called you to be productive, he has called you to multiply, basically, we've been called to be entrepreneurs in a certain way.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, join me to just celebrate Elder Stephen Ochola for the wisdom he has shared with us. You can hand claps, just those virtual claps. If you can unmute, say thank you, please go ahead. But Elder Stephen, thank you so much for empowering us. I
Amen.
believe we we are challenged. We are challenged, and I believe we are all taking away one or two things. Don't take away very many. You may not do anything at all. Just pick one thing you can run with and start there. The rest will follow suit. Thank you so much. These marriage series, family series are brought to you, proudly brought to you by Deliverance Church, Makere Hill, from the Marriage Ministry. So on this note, I'd like to hand over to James to give us a few remarks and then close. Thank you very much. Sorry, James. Okay. Could I then kindly request Paul?
Thank you so much, Doreen, for moderating this very well. Thank you
Hello.
James, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Now we can. You can take over.
Yes, we can. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Elder Steve, for taking us through the 2 sessions on building a family enterprise. I guess there's a lot more reflecting to do on this other one with the truths and nuggets shared. Definitely
Okay. James, we can't hear you.
have traffic questions coming to your inbox in both sessions. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear?
James, first put that we can't hear you without that.
Thanks a lot, colleagues, for your time. And thanks a lot, Elder Steve, once again for teaching, facilitating, and speaking regarding family.
All right.
Enterprise. At this point, we can just some nuggets.
All right. I think we'll pray. Stephen, we are so grateful. Thank you so much. And may the Lord continue to water you even as you water many. Father, we want to thank you so much for your grace that we've received through this mentorship series. Lord, help us to be that army that will change the way things are done. Let us give us the grace to become the firsts, even in our families, oh God, to do something that generations after us will be feeding from its fruit. Give us that grace. Where we need to take courageous steps, where we need to have foresight, Lord, like the wise virgins, I pray for that strength, the foresight, the capacity to prepare for the days ahead, so that even our latter days will be lived in fruitfulness. Will you continue to lead each one of us, wherever we are, to move forward and to be productive and produce fruit? Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. All right. Good night, good people.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Good night.